Well, we can get started. Thank you for being here tonight. My name is Gabe Keller Flores. I'm the operations manager at Common Ground and one of our Dharma teachers. Happy to be filling in for Mark while he's on retreat for a couple months this summer. So we'll sit together, I'll lead a guided meditation, and then I'll share some thoughts, and then we'll have some time for open discussion. So if you haven't already, beginning to settle into your space wherever you are, maybe feeling that there's space around you, you're not crowded. And also feeling support from the ground beneath you. Making any adjustments so you're sitting in a comfortable and upright way. And as we sit here, not rushing to a meditation technique, but seeing if it's possible to arrive more fully, to land here in the body and mind just as they are. And as a way to settle in, I invite you to recollect in your day moments where you feel that you did your best in terms of non-harming, moving through the world in a kind way, in a way that is full of care and respect for yourself, for others. Maybe it was that you took the time to make yourself a meal or to meditate this morning or to listen to someone when they were sharing something with you. See what comes to mind that you can appreciate about the way that you live today and the way that you valued non-harming and taking care as you moved throughout your day, did what you had to do. Maybe reflecting that you did your best to not cause harm, even though it might have been easy to cause harm in some way. And appreciate that non-remorse to whatever degree it's present. Yes, today I didn't cause harm in this way or in that way. And again, seeing what comes to mind and seeing if it's possible to allow the non-remorse to uplift the heart, even in some small way. This is a great gain for me, this commitment to doing my best to not cause harm. Letting that goodness, that beauty register in the heart, maybe felt in some embodied way, some flavor of joy, the absence of regret, some sense of uplift or gladness. And feel what that feels like in the heart. And at a certain point, you can let go of the particulars of the stories, memories, and simply allow appreciation to be known in the heart, maybe the physical heart center in the middle of the chest. Maybe there's some sensations there that feel light, buoyant, appreciative. Or maybe they feel steady in some way, a quiet kind of gladness. So without needing to make anything happen, just tuning in to what's present in the heart center. And any flavor of appreciation of our own goodness, let that fill as much as it wants to fill the space of the heart and body, the space of awareness. Perhaps noticing any flavor of tranquility or calm. Calm that arises from this sense of happiness, appreciation, well-being, calm of a mind that's not agitated, that's content to sit and rest in itself. No rush, nowhere to go, nothing to do other than learning to fully inhabit the heart and the body that are content, are settled, are happy, happy just to be here fully. And as you sit, opening to the fullness of what it feels like to have a body here and now. Perhaps you notice the rhythm of breathing happening on its own. Moving through the energy field of the body, sitting, not needing to control the breathing, simply allowing it to register, to be known within this larger context of sitting in a full and relaxed way. Maybe exploring how breathing affects the body. We breathe in, we breathe out. Having an open mind about how the body experiences breathing on its own terms, breathing as a embodied experience, a whole body experience. Emphasizing the receptive quality of mindfulness, of the body's sensitivity that receives the energy of breathing all on its own without us having to make anything happen or pinpoint the breathing in any particular place. Learning from the body, from the body's sensitivity about how breathing affects the whole body and the body's energy. And as we explore the effects of breathing, we might notice that sometimes breathing is longer, and sometimes breathing is shorter. So having that kind of sensitivity, to the breathing, where we're really with our present moment experience in this direct but relaxed way. Giving ourselves fully to this simple activity of sitting and breathing mindfully, breathing with full awareness in a relaxed way, not straining, forcing, trying to make something happen, but emphasizing the body's own natural receptivity to breathing. Breathing's already happening. Can we receive it? Can we allow it to register just as it is, moment by moment? Let's continue in silence. Seeing if it's possible to be wholehearted with this simple activity of sitting, feeling the whole body, breathing, breathing in, breathing out with full awareness. Is it possible to be wholehearted, fully present, and relaxed? This simple, involuntary activity. What would that be like? Sitting and breathing, sensitive to the whole body, and encouraging the body to be calm, to settle. Exploring what it would be like to breathe in an easeful way, or to receive the breathing in an easeful way. For the last minute or so, simply sitting and inclining the energies of the body and mind towards ease and letting go, relaxation, as we sit together for another minute or so. And then in your own time, you can begin to open the eyes, move the body a bit, look around, come back to your space and to our Zoom space. And we'll just take a minute. If you'd like to stand and stretch, you can do that. Thanks, everyone, for your practice. So it's nice to be here with everyone. I'm offering a series of sorts, but it's drop-in. So last week we talked about, so the whole series is on calm, the awakening factor of calm, what supports it, and different approaches to supporting this factor. I mentioned last week that Sayadaw Tejaniya says that calm may not be something we can will, it may be more of a result, and how we practice the first three factors of awakening of mindfulness and investigation and energy, how we apply our energy. Those are more the inputs. And then the other four factors of awakening of rapture or joy, and then tranquility and unification of mind, concentration, and equanimity are more results. So that might be helpful to keep in mind as we explore not how do I do calm, but what are the natural supporting conditions for this quality that the Buddha named one of the 7 factors of awakening. So one of the balancing factors that allows the mind to be in a state where it's really primed for seeing clearly, which is vipassana or insight, which is when the mind sees something it hasn't seen before, and something about how stress arises and stress ceases. So calm is one ingredient. And like I said last week, I was inspired to focus on it because it seems like a pretty rare quality in my mind and often in the world. It's really not at the top of our priority lists, I think, for most of us. And we may not even have a good sense of what it is and what it feels like and how it can be supportive. And how it can be really supportive in a deep way, not just maybe the kind of calm when we zone out, but a kind of calm that is also balanced with the other factors of awakening. There's energy present, there's mindfulness, so we're awake. So we really can't talk about it in isolation, but at times we may be out of balance in some way. And speaking for myself, this flavor of calm has just been more interesting to me lately as a factor that really can be really supportive in my meditation, but also just in my daily life. And even just to bring that up as an exploration, because we may have some distrust of calm, like it's not compatible with with life. It's only when we're kind of tuning out. But in our meditation practice and then in daily life, we're exploring what is a kind of calm that isn't completely tuned out. It's just sort of this vitality. It's like it's the energies of the mind and body have settled. But just because they're settled, in some ways there's a kind of the energy is still there, but it's sort of latent. Maybe you've had that experience sometime. Maybe if you're doing some activity and you know that you could be called upon, but in that moment, maybe you're sort of just waiting. So there can be that sense of calm, but also awake. Tranquility and insight are often talked about as the two pieces of our practice. So they really go together. So that's a bit of what I want to talk about today, somewhat through the lens of mindfulness of breathing, which we did a bit of in the guided meditation, but also just more broadly, moving from last week, where we talked about our actions in the world and our ethics as a support for things settling. And then today, talking a bit more about meditation. But even when we talk about meditation, we can't really separate meditation as a technique from the mind that comes to meditation, which again is why often the Buddha would talk about our actions as a support for the mind settling. So a lot of I think the main point I want to make around meditation tonight and mindfulness of breathing, well, there's probably a few points, but I think they're related in the sense that we're not doing it rotely. We're not doing it mechanistically. We're not doing it forcefully. The attitude that we bring, even to a somewhat structured practice like mindfulness of breathing, may actually be the most important piece. Or to say it a different way, it may not actually be possible to separate the mind and the attitude with which we're practicing from the efforts that we may make. And we might think of our meditation practice as this laboratory, this exploration, where we're not just interested in breathing. It's almost like breathing is helping us get in touch with all the different factors of body and mind and how body and mind interrelate and how we are with breathing. So it's really a mindfulness of mind in a way. We're being aware of the mind that is affected by breathing with full awareness. So from that point of view, what's less important is the particular technique we might use. There are many techniques offered and different suggestions on how to practice mindfulness of breathing, different kind of tips and tricks, and you can count your breathing to kind of support the mind really giving that its full attention. And all of those can be skillful means. But yeah, if we're approaching it from a willful, forceful stance, and we're not including that attitude, then it can easily become just another thing that either we force our minds into and we have some amount of success on that level, but it's tight and it's not easeful. We may be successful in not thinking as much about other things and focusing on sensations in a really directed way, but we may at the end just feel tight and tense and not have learned much about the mind and the attitude in the mind. Whereas if we start with full body awareness and a peaceful relationship with the body as it's sitting and the whole body, and even like we did tonight, reflecting on our commitment to non-harming or some other reflection that supports sort of the context with why we're meditating. Like, well, yeah, I'm meditating because I care about this life, care about this heart. I want to understand more deeply my mind, and then in that context, then we have some reference point to the energy of the body that is affected by breathing and also affected by the different thoughts and emotions that come through. So this is a kind of whole body and whole body awareness practice, and the breathing is included in that as opposed to narrowly focused on the breathing. And a lot of what I'm sharing and will share is influenced by Ajahn Sucitto, a British monk and wonderful teacher. He says that we shouldn't focus on the breathing until you can sense it happening. And I like that because, with anything, most of us like to do a good job. And so if we hear, okay, I'm going to do mindfulness of breathing, then for a lot of us, it becomes a very easy way to have that really willful approach and judge ourselves and kind of go looking for what we think is success, what we think is breathing, without being aware of that attitude. And so this invitation to first feel the body, to me, it's really makes a lot of sense, because the breathing that, again, this is somewhat Ajahn Sucitto's interpretation, but it resonates for me and in my own experience, that what makes the breathing suitable as a place to gather attention and settle the heart and the body isn't so much the particular sensations, but the energy of breathing, that it's rhythmic and it's involuntary. It's something we can receive. It's not something we have to do. And from that point of view, that receptive point of view, it makes sense to me that we would first sort of get ourselves in the vicinity where this breathing happens. And where that breathing happens, that energy breathing, isn't just in one place, like the nostrils or the abdomen. The breathing affects the whole body. So to first take the time, and it may take half our sit, who knows? It's hard to say. A lot of us spend a lot of our day disconnected from our body. But to begin without aiming anywhere, without needing to focus and set up that sort of paradigm of specificity and focus, but to begin by relaxing and settling into some amount of ease just in sitting, and including the whole body, maybe parts of the body that are asking for attention or somewhat numb. Just this basic full body awareness. And as we settle into that, then at a certain point, breathing will just become apparent of how we experience breathing within that field of sitting, feeling the body, feeling the whole body, including the different parts, so that more we're feeling whole, we're feeling like we're fully present. And then within that context, breathing can be experienced as it affects that whole context of the body, and also of where the body and the mind meet, which is a lot of the value of this whole body awareness, is that we'll feel different parts of the body, like I was saying, that might be numb or disconnected, or energy, maybe some emotion. When we're in touch with the whole body and then we experience breathing, we'll notice how the breathing is affecting the body, and also how different energies or emotions in the body might be affecting the breathing. So it's this way where it's less, again, about the sensations and just sort of pinpointing the sensations, and more about the full context and how all those different systems of the body, mind, heart, emotion affect each other. And I think in that sense, we're more likely to experience the breathing as the body experiences breathing, and less from preconceived notions we might have, the idea of the breath as air moving through the body, which that's true on that physical level. But isn't it also true that breathing in, there's some sort of uplift that happens, which we could probably explain by oxygen is coming in and moving through the body, energizing the cells. And as we're breathing out, something's releasing. So this aspect of breathing, which we could call the energy of breathing, how it affects the whole system, that's also something that we can include in our practice. It doesn't have to be just this really specific concentrating on a point. And in my experience, I share all this mostly because this is what has worked for me in terms of what actually supports an easeful abiding with breathing. And what we explored in the guided meditation comes from the Anapanasati Sutta, loosely. So this is the discourse on mindfulness of breathing. And again, I won't go through the whole thing. It's 16 steps, but we sort of covered the first 5 or 6 or so. But even in those initial 6 or so instructions, I think a lot of the language really aligns with this way of practicing, breathing sensitive, fully sensitive to the whole body, and breathing in and breathing out, calming the bodily formations. So that's more than just attention to a point or to sensations. Ajahn Sucitto makes the point that anapanasati, that the pana refers to breathing, and it's the same word as in Sanskrit as prana, which you may be familiar with from yoga. And I'm not a real serious yoga student, but even just linguistically, that word prana to me has those connotations of not just the physical sensations or the physical movement of air, but the effect, the energetic effect of breathing. And different traditions, he mentions a Chinese tradition, have that idea that breathing can have soothing effects on the body. And in my experience, that, again, like I said, that's the what makes it suitable if we approach it in that holistic full body way, because it has all those resonances and interrelation with the whole body and the whole energetic system. So when it comes to breathing in, breathing out, calming the bodily formation, one way we could think of that is the energy of breathing sort of suffusing throughout the body, maybe parts of the body that aren't fully included in the awareness, and the breathing, the energy of breathing, inviting things to release, to relax. And a lot of this is dependent on experiencing breathing in a certain way. So in a way that is easeful. And Ajahn Sucitta says, because the breathing is involuntary, it's restful, and because it's rhythmic, it attracts our attention in a natural way, and it's soothing. So there's a lot of receptivity there. It's involuntary, so we're not making the breath a certain way, and it's rhythmic. It has its own rhythm. So the sense I get from that is, like we might feel soothed, it might be relaxing to watch for like at Lake Superior or some other lake, and just watching the waves come in and out. It's involuntary. We're not doing that. So we can sort of just settle back and receive it. And it's rhythmic. So it's sort of, rhythm seems to attract our attention in a really natural way. We don't need to force it. So to me, all of that is pointing to a really receptive way of being with the breathing, where we're sort of trusting the breathing to happen on its own. So we experience some release of the mind that's always doing. And the rhythm is just interesting enough to sort of hold our attention. And that's why I think that some of the initial instructions on knowing if the breathing is long, knowing if the breathing is short, is sort of just encouraging us to give this simple, ordinary experience our full attention, and we'll find that it has these different qualities. So it's the wholeheartedness that allows us to pick up those different qualities. So from that point of view, we could see that whatever stability and ease and settling comes from being aware of breathing, it may come more from the mind giving itself fully and sort of letting go into this natural flow and rhythm, again, then from a really focused attention on a specific point. There is a settling and a collecting, but it may be more mental than physical. It may be more even heart-based, like that there's a one-pointedness of intention, like I really want to be here. And the field of here is the whole field of sitting and breathing, and even aware of how the mind is as we sit and breathe. But so there is sort of this middle ground between just being totally lost or not having a theme in mind, and a focus that may be too tight. And the idea is that breathing may be a really suitable middle ground. We don't have to do it. We don't have to be super specific about sensations. We can just settle back in this bigger field of whole body awareness and experience how the body experiences breathing. And in that way, the mind can gather, but it's not through us focusing hard. Ajahn Sucitto said, mindfulness, just mindfulness. So just being mindful of breathing. Mindfulness is a concentration practice without concentrating, because it's really the ease that supports the mind letting go of what isn't necessary. There's probably a kind of concentration we can have, again, through just will, but it's brittle and it may leave us feeling tight. In my experience, it's really the natural pleasure of the mind resting in a full awareness of body, letting things settle. The mind, we're really inclining towards following the mind's natural preference for pleasure. The Buddha had this moment in his practice. It's a famous moment where he'd been practicing different practices that had to do with more of a willful ascetic practices, or even with the mind willfully, maybe a concentration practice. But he found it tired him out, and his body was weak and didn't lead to insight. And he had this recollection of being a young boy sitting under a tree, and there was a festival going on, and his mind just naturally settling. And his intuition told him that this was the way. And he had some doubt, apparently, because he was really on this ascetic path. Like, is this pleasure dangerous? And his intuition told him that no. And so that's really what brings us deeper and deeper, is following that thread of pleasure that's a pleasure that's not dangerous. It doesn't have any negative side effects, like even other innocuous pleasures might have side effects, like if we eat too much cake or something. But yeah, we can see for ourselves, even just tonight, maybe from the sit, if there was some amount of ease of putting things down, letting go. For me, at least, when I experience that, there's a sense that this is supportive. This is pleasant, yes, and the mind feels refreshed, feels more present, more able to be in the moment, less pushed around. So all this is pointing to, again, following the pleasure of the mind that's absorbing into its own pleasantness, into its own wholesome field, or kind of field of what it feels like for the mind and body to be settled, which again may be relatively rare in our experience, but any little taste of it that we get, we can let it register, and we can even ask that question, maybe similar to what the Buddha asked. Is this dangerous? Does this, is there any reason to not cultivate this, or to not receive it or feel it? It is a different kind of pleasure, so it may take time to trust it, or to feel like, oh, this is okay. But it has more the flavor of letting go, of putting things down that aren't needed. So this sort of relinquishment or falling away of unnecessary stress. And over time, and I'm certainly still feel like a beginner at this, but over time, we can come to really appreciate this option, because so much in life, what we're oriented around is pleasure and trying to find pleasure. And we can really come to appreciate that the mind has this option, this ability, this capacity for this inner pleasure that isn't about certain conditions, external conditions, but is really about the mind coming to appreciate its own presence, you could say, the mind and body. And so it's really the flavor is more of losing in a sense, because we could have the sense, oh, I'm going to be the best meditator, I'm going to really get somewhere. And there is some intention that we bring, but we want it to have the flavor of release, of peace. It's really the falling away of the dominance of the measuring mind that's always measuring, comparing ourselves to others. Is this good enough? Am I doing the meditation good enough? To just abide with breathing in a whole way, in a relaxed way, that can fall away, and that is pleasurable. So that context and the attitude that we bring, like I was saying, is important. Someone said once, I think it was one of the monks at Abhayagiri in California. I visited there a while ago. And he was giving a talk on sila, on ethical conduct. And he said, don't meditate in order to be happy in order to meditate. And we may feel like that's overly simplistic, but I think there's something maybe corrective in that, where maybe it's a chicken and an egg thing, but to me it points to, even that reflection that we did at the beginning of the sit, what can we bring to mind that helps us get in touch with our goodness, with some wholesome quality in the heart and mind, even just, again, the intention to sit for our own well-being and the well-being of others, so that our sitting isn't just a measuring against what we might have in our mind as what a successful meditation would be, and how many breaths am I aware of, and oh yeah, I'm no good at mindfulness of breathing, I never have been. It's easier to be sensitive to breathing, just to the body, if there's some sense of happiness and well-being. And again, I know that's not easy and we can't just make that happen, but even just having that in mind, that sort of the order of operations, maybe there is something we can bring to mind as we sit, or just taking our time when we sit, not rushing, okay, got to get my piece, but like taking my time. Why am I sitting? People have different things. Maybe they have altars, an image of the Buddha or image of teachers, something that makes it bigger than just me and my willpower. There's some bigger intention in the heart. There's something our hearts are connected to. If we're sitting down to practice, there's some intention there. There's some small or bigger amount of confidence that this heart has the capacity to be beautiful, to settle, to see clearly. So any of that can be helpful as a context for practice. Reading before sitting, if there's some book or teacher. To me, there is something about the energy of Dharma that can be transmitted through books or reflections. And it's, again, less like I'm reading a recipe book and remembering, oh yeah, 2 breaths, and then it's more, there's a heart energy to it. calm, if we're talking about, I think, the kind of calm the Buddha encouraged, um, I think it's appropriate to feel some sort of resonance in our hearts. Yes, this heart does yearn for a kind of calm that where things can really rest, where the weary mind can rest. So even if it's that sort of, yes, I care about this weary mind, then that's a very different attitude, even to approach the intention for settling. Then, it's more of a compassion. May this weary mind settle. It's okay for this to put things aside. It's okay. Then, um, oh, this bad mind that's always running around. I have to whip it into shape. You can already feel that's actually agitating. So it's really understanding that the energy, the attitude we bring has an effect, and we can't sidestep that. In a way, we have to start with that. Ajahn Amaro said in this vein, let the body assume its natural ease. Let the mind assume its natural ease. Now just stay alert to anything that arises to disturb that natural ease. So that could be a way that we begin a meditation time. It's sort of like starting with, instead of starting with the presumption that I am this chaotic, disturbed mind. Yeah, there is chaos, there is disturbance, but is there a natural ease that's also part of the mind, and maybe a deeper part than that surface agitation, a deeper part of the body that can settle, that naturally wants to settle. There's that image of a snow globe. We're sort of like snow globes that have been shaken up, and maybe we're the ones shaking, maybe sometimes other people are the ones shaking, or a combination. But snow globes left on their own settle. So that's part of the investigation, the exploration, is the kind of effort that's needed for things to settle. And it's sort of paradoxical. There is an effort required, but in a way it's, we spoke about restraint last week, and of the obstructions to the natural flow of practice. And that's how I interpret some of the instructions in mindfulness of breathing, about being fully sensitive to the body and calming the bodily formations while breathing. That breathing sort of, and that whole body awareness then gives us access and gives us a context in which then to feel parts of the body that might be held or tight. And then once they're included in awareness and breathing is naturally moving through, then maybe there's just a gentle invitation. Oh yeah, this doesn't need to be held. Could this be let go, released into this flow of sitting, breathing fully in awareness? It's like, what's getting in the way of just that natural flow? The parts of our body that might feel tense, stuck. We don't, it's like if there's a whirlpool in water, you don't get rid of that whirlpool by grabbing it and trying to work it out, but just by, in a way, tuning into the water around it and letting that little energy flow be absorbed into the surrounding water. I'll just make a few more points and then open it up for discussion. But even as we're talking about, the settling and also that interest in the parts of the body, parts of the mind that aren't settled and that can be encouraged to release, to settle, there's elements of calming and there's elements of seeing clearly in that. So you can really see how these two main parts of our practice support each other: the settling, the ease, and the interest or the investigation. So these can really be practiced together, and they support each other. The seeing clearly, oh yeah, this is stress, or this is constriction. It can be released. That supports things settling deeper. And then things settling deeper, then maybe we become aware of some more subtle form of clinging, energetic clinging, mental clinging, physical clinging. So in my understanding, that's really how things deepen in that mutually supportive way. And we don't have to necessarily think that they have to be practiced separately, settling and seeing clearly. Maybe there's this mindfulness of breathing and be this full awareness where we're settling and we're including more and more of the body and mind. This is from Thanissaro Bhikkhu on this point. So samatha is the word used for practices that are primarily about settling, and vipassana means seeing clearly. So sometimes these are spoken of as separate practices, and they can be practiced separately in a way in terms of focus and priority. But it seems that the Buddha saw them really as happening together and complementary and mutually supportive, like I was saying. So Thanissaro Bhikkhu says, from this description of something else he was talking about, but he says, it's obvious that samatha and vipassana are not separate paths of practice, but instead are complementary ways of relating to the present moment. Samatha provides a sense of ease in the present, vipassana a clear-eyed view of events as they actually occur in and of themselves. So you can imagine those really coming together. The sense of ease in the present, supporting the mind not wandering off, really being content to be here and now, and sort of being the power behind the microscope, if you will, or just the, providing the presence, sort of the stability with which then things can be seen more clearly, just like in a pond, like in that metaphor related to the hindrances. When the pond is settled and still, then it's easy to see to the bottom of it. This other term that sometimes is used in our tradition of dry insight. So sort of, I'm just going to be aware of things as they are. And just with my ordinary state of mind, maybe this is how we practice in daily life. We just do the best we can because we're busy but we're still want to see things as they are. Dry insight and wet insight would be more that we're also valuing this, the strength and stability of the mind and the calming. And there might be in that wet insight an actual preference towards what's pleasant. And we can just explore, what is actually supportive in our practice in daily life and in meditation. But for myself, it just seems so helpful and maybe a prerequisite for any kind of the mind really seeing clearly, for there to be some degree of stability and settledness. How much is needed maybe is an open question, but to me that's been I've been appreciating more even in daily life. I think I would be more effective and more able to see clearly what's important now if I maybe just took a second and breathed or paused, something like that. So that's I guess my thoughts on that we probably need some degree of that wetness, and it's just a matter of how much. But that's really an exploration, I think, for each of us. Yeah. What is that balance of mind, that balance of those factors of awakening for each of us that's settled enough, but also present enough and, yeah, interested enough where insight can arise. So I'll leave my thoughts there and thank you for your kind attention.